Welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters. And let's not talk more about elections and
No voting.
proportional representation.
Right.
All
Let's
right.
go to the nitty gritty.
Right.
What
so,
happened?
So there was some things that happened up at City Hall last night. I wasn't up there, but I
I
tuned
watched
in.
it. Me too.
And kind of took track. And of course, I always look at things in advance just to kind of handicap
Yes.
the race and sort of
Yes.
know what's coming up.
Yes.
One thing that I thought they might have taken up last night, but they did not take up, was the cannabis issue.
Yeah. Reefer madness.
Reefer madness.
On your post.
So so they have some of the zoning is all in place, but the thing is there's the one little missing piece is sort of a regulatory piece. And again, I'm going to say this in the most minimal way, but it was that they have to make decisions as to how to grant the permitting amongst the so-called social equity versus economic empowerment kind of special cases there. If you're kind of a full vertically integrated marijuana production machine, that you grow it, you move it, you sell it, you
got lots
smoke
of
it, you
stuff.
eat it, you whatever.
Got
But
a lot of
yeah,
financial backing.
yeah, so those tend to be the
support.
the big rollers. They have, but the thing is that then there are these provisions under the state law for social equity and economic empowerment. Now, what those exactly mean? Well, all right, you can
But
probably
it's not
figure
giving
it out.
them money, though, is it?
No, it's not giving them money, but
It's
the
just
thing
giving
is
them a
that
chance to compete. But if they don't
but they
have
don't
the
need
money,
to have the whole vertical integration. They don't need
I
to
see.
generate their own product.
No, but they still need to get a business plan and have
Yes,
money, and that's
right.
very hard to do.
And that's right. So, but the thing is, you don't need even a fraction of what it takes to be one of the mainstream ones. Now, certain provisions in the zoning law, like you can't have the regular ones more than 1,800 feet close to each other, or
then
less than 1,800
So-
feet. But that doesn't apply apparently to the
Which doesn't
social
make
equity.
sense,
It sort of doesn't make sense.
because it could be closer to a school.
Yeah, so the thing is that there's all this sort of carving out of exceptions in order
Yeah.
to give it a competitive advantage. But within it, and this is maybe the one of the, I mean, they didn't vote it, right? But
Didn't even get
it'll
discussed.
probably come up in another week or two.
Well, there's
but-
only a few meetings left in June.
Right, well, the thing is, it's a regulation, but the thing is that there are these businesses are already kind of trying
Yeah.
to get in the meeting with community groups and
Oh,
whatever.
there's all these
So
community
you
meetings.
can't
yeah.
kind of hold off forever on the
No.
regulation, so
No.
it's coming quick, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is that, I mean, with the Central Square Advisory Committee, we had one social equity applicant and one economic empowerment applicant, both trying to open up within 100 or 200 feet of a one that's already opening up in Central Square, right? And it was a kind of a curious process where it's almost like their applicants are sort of trying to show how connected they are, so whether, they have former elected officials are serving as their legal counsel. They're saying how connected they are to the community, whatever. It's a little like political patronage without being political
So they
patronage.
they don't have to prove that they can financially do it?
I think they do have to make that case before they get the permit.
I would hope so. Could be
yeah,
they could
so-
fail, and then you've gone through all
Right, that's true. But the thing is that it's not nearly as strong a financial commitment necessary as it would be for the others. So how is it going to shake out? I don't know. But I was curiously looking at the committee reports from the city council where they were actually arguing, well, should we be giving an advantage to the social equity applicants or the economic empowerment?
I don't know.
Applicants.
Actually, I don't even know what the difference in those terms are. Is social equity like women, men? or-
Yeah, I think people who have somehow sort of got a raw deal under the war on drugs, so actually having a conviction can actually give you an advantage under those
But how
criteria.
many of those people are actually interested in opening a? It's just
It doesn't
so
need to be
odd.
many, the
Well,
thing
what's
is,
economic empowerment? Would that be more on
well, see,
women
now that to
owned
me-
and all that?
it could be that, or it could be
Or-
ones where they're actually gonna hire a lot of local people, give
I see.
jobs locally or whatever. I mean, I'll be honest with you, in the great grand scheme of sort of
Yeah.
handing out preferential
Yeah.
treatment, I kind of go more with the
Economic,
economic
yeah.
empowerment, because if you're going to be providing jobs
It's more
to local
holistic,
people,
yeah.
that just makes a lot more sense. It's not a matter of trying to,
Yeah.
right the wrongs of the past. It just says, we're here and now, what's best, right?
Right.
So anyway, the council's got to make some decisions on this.
This
and
whole
it'll
thing
happen
makes
soon.
me absolutely nuts. I voted against it. There's too many of,
Yeah. So
I'm too much for this world at this point.
Yeah,
It's too much for me. Between the self-driving cars and cannabis and everything,
I do
gosh.
kind of find it interesting. I think when the book is written about the 2018-2019 Cambridge City Council, what it'll be remembered for, and marijuana is actually going to be probably one of them, the main things,
and bikes.
And social housing, I guess.
Oh,
But,
you stopped though with the social housing.
Well, I mean, that's what it is.
I don't think so.
Right?
We
that's
don't agree
that's
on
just
that.
a definition. That's just a
Well,
definition. Now, there are other things that were on the council that were not really matters to vote, but which I did find kind of interesting. One was there was a small, I think it was like a $2,000 expenditure to finish out a project called Mapping Feminist Cambridge.
Oh, yeah. I saw that, yeah.
And I looked at that and I said, I like stuff like that, because the thing is, what you're doing is you're getting historical stuff, largely 20th century historical stuff, and sort of putting it out there for people to consume. And, there's been far too little history of Cambridge in the 20th century put out there. And a big piece of that history includes things like women's movement things,
New Words
countercultural
Bookstore, Women's
matters.
Center, like mapping it as permanent sites.
Yeah. So sometimes that just becomes sort of markers on the streets, but sometimes it's basically, it can be something as like, they have a website, I think at the Women's Commission has a website that they put together that has, it's sort of like a gallery of significant women over the last few centuries in Cambridge, some of whom we know, it's very contemporary.
Still living. Yeah.
Oh yeah, very much. And I love that type of stuff. And it reminded me when I saw the expenditure that I think it was 2 summers ago, I actually went on one of these ones with a Women's Commission group. I think it was that they were at least co-sponsors of it. And it was basically doing a walking tour. And I was pleased when I went looking around about this a couple of days ago. They actually have 4 different PDFs that you can download that
For different walks.
for different
not
walks. Yeah, it's sort of on a feminist history.
So all of these are through the women's. I wasn't clear on what. Okay.
Yeah. So there's one in Area 4, Cambridgeport, Riverside and Cambridgeport, and in Mid Cambridge, right? So I don't know what the expenditure is going to be.
You're just a sample. This is, you can show this.
Yeah.
Okay, this is
So
Cambridgeport.
It just gives you some route maps.
Oh, look at that, and you can go 2 miles.
And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see it actually gives you some, not only just the how you go, but also, let's go down a little further. I think it actually gives you some of the narrative, or does it? Maybe not on this one.
More information.
Yeah, so then it actually gives you the
references.
names and gives you some background.
First female. This is wonderful.
Yeah, no, it's really great.
I didn't even know about this, and I was on the Women's Commission.
Yeah, so the thing is, when I see stuff like this on a Cambridge City Council thing, I say this needs to be highlighted.
And 2,000, that's nothing.
It's just, and that's not for this specifically. It's for something called the title was Mapping Feminist Cambridge. There's actually places like Inman Square was sort of a hotbed for a lot of these things, and a lot of these buildings are sort of gone now. But but there are some of them are still around, and there's you can do that. And it reminded me there was a fellow. It's actually coming up soon. A fellow named Tim Devon of Somerville. I think he works in the library at Somerville. He's put together. I think I got 3 booklets called Mapping Utopia, which was about these countercultural movements in Boston, Cambridge, and elsewhere. And I've gone on at least 2 of his walking tours. At least 2 of these walking tours. And they were incredibly informative.
Why is he calling it Utopia? Curious.
I think it were these sort of utopian ideals, sort of the counterculture. They said, we're going to reinvent the world, and they were all very, very forward-looking. And there's some of the characters who were really, really big on that are now the characters you'll just see sitting in a coffee shop as an old guy now.
So he has one coming up on July 13th?
July 13th,
Okay.
So this one's actually, I want I think $5 because they had too many people, I think, on at least one of these, so they want to kind of manage it a little bit better. But they're really worth it. I mean, I enjoyed them a lot. I had this great photo of, there was on Prospect Street, there was a place called the Trout Fishing in America School.
Yeah, I see you mentioned that.
And I've had the picture around for a long time, and and I didn't really know a lot about it. It was really for some kids who weren't making it in the traditional high school, and it was kind of an alternative
But in
school
the
for
middle
them.
of Cambridge trout fishing? I mean, you have to go to
Trout
a lake
fishing,
to get...
no, Trout Fishing America is a book by Richard Brodigan.
Oh, of course.
And the picture actually has
Oh,
Richard
right.
Brodigan in Cambridge visiting at the Trout
Oh,
Fishing
you're
in
right.
America
It's
school.
just, it's not meaning
Yeah.
what it is. Okay.
Right.
You're
They
right.
and they actually moved after they left the building on Prospect Street. They actually went in on Broadway, very close to where I live, in the same, I believe, in the same building where the Broadway Bicycle School then
Oh.
followed it. So in a way, you would argue that the Broadway Bicycle School is kind of a continuation
of
of
the-
the idea, at least.
That was a novel, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
it a novel?
I guess you could call it a novel,
So-
right?
Okay.
Sort of a strange book at the time, but it was very sort of part of the counterculture. Anyway, so Tim Devon does these wonderful tours, and at the one we did, we actually had somebody who ran the photography stuff for Trout Fishing America School. I think it's a guy named Greg Hill. So I met him, and then he provided a bunch of other photos
Greg
I'd
Hill.
never
That
seen.
sounds very familiar.
Yeah, and it
He's
was
a librarian, I think. Maybe.
right. So anyway, it was great, and so whenever I see things like that, just like whenever I see the
You
Cambridge,
know where you'll be July 13th then.
I'm pretty sure. I think
Yeah.
I could spring for the $5.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think you can.
Yeah, But anyway, these are good things. The Cambridge Historical Commission continues to put out oral histories. This is really the good stuff. This is like the extras of life in Cambridge that I
Yeah,
think
there's lots
more
of
people
walks
should
that
know
they
about.
sponsor. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do.
It's so much more
Yeah.
fun when you do a walking tour
Yeah.
with either
Yeah.
Charlie Sullivan from the Cambridge
You
Historical
learn,
Commission
yeah.
or others, when there are people who are actually part of some of the history that you're actually walking in.
Yeah.
It's just great, and this is the time of year when you would want to have these because the
Yeah.
weather's good, and and it's just it's a really great thing. So anyway, look for it. I think it's a great thing. So one other thing I've mentioned briefly is there were resolutions noting people who have passed away or retirements or whatever.
Congratulations, yeah.
So I want to make a special note here from Mark McCabe. Mark McCabe, sort of the head of the Cambridge Animal Commission. Everybody knows Mark wearing his kind of policeman suit,
Yeah.
but he's the dog officer, essentially, the animal control officer for this city. And since they've been right down the street from me is where the
Yes.
Animal Commission has been located, I have been running into Mark and talking with Mark for as long as I can remember. So he's retiring, I think this month, probably in another week or so. So fare thee well, Mark McCabe.
Very nice
Wonderful,
guy.
wonderful guy.
I
Yeah.
met him when I was doing something with CCTV on Fort Washington and dog parks.
Yep.
He was very helpful.
Well, he's one
I
of the
think
most
we
helpful
quoted
people
him.
in the
He
city.
might have been in it, I forget.
Yeah, honestly, the Animal Commission has been some of the most helpful people I've
Yeah.
met in the city. They were actually giving one of the Outstanding Employee Awards to one person from the Animal Commission a few weeks ago. And when she was up there, I was saying, like, oh, I remember her. We went up the ladder up on my roof when there was a
Ah.
raccoon up there,
Oh, yeah.
or a cat, or
Yeah,
whatever.
They caught a raccoon in a construction thing that was, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
They'll do those things.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime,
definitely.
you call them anytime too.
I know.
think, yeah.
Well, not overnight.
Oh.
You can leave a
Oh.
message, but they're
Well, what do
usually...
you do if there's something's happening overnight?
They call the cops, I think, at that
Oh,
point.
okay.
If it's really an emergency or something
All
like
right.
that. There's one other kind of curious thing. I didn't read it super carefully, but there's language for, or at least for a starting point for a home rule petition, having to do with these transportation network companies,
Oh, right. And
TNCs.
that was charter righted because
I
Toomey charter righted, but also Craig Kelly wasn't there.
Right. Okay. So it's interesting because if you look at it, it's
Is that the one he charter righted? Am I wrong about that?
not
Yeah, they
sure,
didn't
not
discuss
sure.
it.
But the thing is, a lot of things that they pass, they don't discuss. They just sort of wave them through. But
No, this was pulled.
specifically,
Yeah.
right? So the idea there is that, and it's interesting because you have to read
Oh, no, it
between the
wasn't.
lines
No, you're right. It was
sometimes.
number 5, yeah.
Right, so there's, there was some city council orders of people who were bothered by the fact that Uber and Lyft drivers would block bike
Right.
lanes and whatever. But, and okay, great. So if you want to pass some regulations to somehow kind of curtail Uber and Lyft because they're not being good neighbors, okay, great. But meanwhile, who's the one who provided the language, but it was the Cambridge, the local taxi medallion
Really?
owners
Yeah.
who basically see them as competition. So when I see something like that, I say, okay, so
Yeah.
they trying to propose some home rule legislation here in order to ensure safety of cyclists, et cetera, or are they basically sort of shilling for the
I don't know
medallion
if they're
owners?
shilling for them, but they're trying to, I guess, reach out. You're right, it was not pulled, but it was charter righted before
Yeah.
they even, it
I
was
mean,
ratified.
I'll be the first one to say that I think it is not a level playing field. I mean, the thing is that
Right.
taxi cabs were like this heavily regulated entity for years, and then just because of some quirkiness in the way the laws are written,
Yeah,
the Uber and Lyft, who are taxis, let's face it, they're taxis,
yeah.
but legally, no, they're just networking and connecting people with cars.
Well, it was like
to-
the Airbnbs, are they,
Yeah, so the thing is, all this disruptive economics is great because I suppose it gives more consumer choice, but it has been pretty disruptive in other ways that have not been always so
Well,
good.
if you didn't have the medallion issue and
Right.
the fact that they had to buy thousands, hundreds, I mean, they were counting on them for their retirement. I think that's same thing with the liquor
Yeah,
licenses too.
Right, but what happened with some of
Yeah.
those is, like, there
Yeah.
was one guy, I forget the fellow's name, but in Boston, he owned
Yeah.
like 400 medallions.
Oh,
so
yeah, it was.
It wasn't,
yeah.
the
No,
notion,
I know.
oftentimes they put
No, it's
forward
not
this
individual. You buy
this
it from
impression that
some-
it's
no.
a poor immigrant person
No.
who has a medallion and they need it to
No, but
feed
a
their
lot of them though
family.
bought them through that person. In other words, maybe they were. It was
Well,
like
the
a
thing
bank,
is,
the mortgage or
In
something. I don't know.
relatively recent times, so the
Yeah.
value would, because of Uber and Lyft and these TNCs, the
Oh, they
value of
dropped
a
immediately,
medallion
yeah.
it's like this, it's
It's
not worthless,
not
but
even
it's
worth 50,000.
yeah.
They
So
paid
people,
like 300, 400,000.
that's right. People were paying hundreds of thousands
Crazy.
of dollars, but it's sort of like the same dilemma with the liquor
little bit,
licenses
yeah.
in Cambridge.
Right.
So the thing is, when you had all these liquor caps, so then, if you wanted to open up a restaurant, you wanted to have beer and
You had to get
wine,
it from somebody
you had to
else.
get it from somebody, and you paid an exorbitant amount of money, but then they changed the rules down the road, and I'm glad they're changing the rules, but we meant that if you paid a lot of
Stuck.
money under the old rules, there's
Yeah.
not a great resolution yet. Maybe there will never be a great resolution.
Well, I don't see how there could be, because then you could say the same thing about the taxis, no?
There could be sort of a
Although
bind.
that was never a state-regulated thing, right? The medallions, was that all privately done?
The problem with the medallions,
I
as
don't know
well
that.
as the liquor licenses, is that it's not like the license commissions set the values. They did initially, and it's relatively modest. But the thing is then when if there's a cap on how many are out there, then it's basically you bid on them. And so the thing is the
But with
prices
the
went up.
medallions, though, was there a cap? I mean,
Yes.
so the state did have some input into that?
The cities,
The city does,
yeah.
oh, okay.
So the thing is,
Huh.
they issued only a certain number of licenses, and
I see.
I remember it being controversial when they were going to be issuing another
Sure.
7 licenses,
Yeah.
and then the people who already had licenses, they felt that they were somehow being given away for free.
Well, yeah.
When why are you selling that for a few $1,000s when I paid $100,000 for
well,
mine, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
unfortunate, because I think there's situations like that.
Yeah. In my kind of laissez-faire economical worldview, I don't like caps at all. I think what works better is
Free
that
market.
you have non-transferable licenses, and you simply make the case to the local license commission about whether you should have it or not, and it's not transferable, and you can't sell it. But I don't know whether the state law is in agreement with that point of view. I think that it might still be saleable, but I think I think the idea of turning these things into commodities
Yeah.
that can be bought and sold is just a bad,
Well, that's
bad
probably
road
never
to go
gonna
down.
happen again.
Probably not. I mean, and
I
if one
think
good thing comes out of all this disruptive economics, maybe it is that
Yeah.
we'll never, hopefully never go back to that sort of.
But it seems like
rigidity
we're trying to
again.
really regulate now Airbnb and all.
Yeah.
In other words, it's kind of,
And-
okay, this all happened, we gotta get in
Actually,
there
I
with
got a-
regulation so we can get the money.
Because
taxes and
because
all
I own a
that, you know?
3-family house, I got a
Oh,
I got a card in the mail.
We got one at River Street.
Yeah, I think
and
they
sent one
did
to
it
David at
citywide
Putnam,
because-
Citywide.
Well, because they don't actually know who actually has Airbnbs going. So
No,
I
they're
think
just giving you you better register.
you better register, right? Now,
We need that money for everything.
and I think the
you're not gonna get a
registration
whole lot
rates
of
haven't
money.
been great.
No,
so the
they're
cities-
like a third, if
Something
that.
like that.
Yeah.
And the Airbnb industry isn't being particularly cooperative either, So, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be the first to admit that I think that just saying, okay, everybody rent any space you have anywhere, anytime, maybe isn't really the best, right? Because things could become a little too chaotic.
Well, no, but I mean, I think Airbnb, if it's done well, not like taking over a whole building where it's
And that's actually the
That's
biggest,
what they're
the
trying to
bigger
get
problem,
at.
you know. So on the one hand, you've got
Right.
people who want to,
not mom and pops and not
people want to
with
actually,
emptiness. Right.
you know, build deed restricted housing,
that-
whatever.
That's
And then
the problem.
and then meanwhile, at the same time, because
Yeah.
they're saying, well, we need more of this housing, then you're taking housing off the market, the free market, to turn it into essentially short-term hotels.
Well,
Right.
these building whatever they are, they're taking like new developments. Okay, let's take these three.
Right.
That's going to be because we're already managing it, and we're going to use Airbnb. That's
Right.
not right.
If you had
Yeah.
no regulation at all about this, you
No, you
could
have to have
easily have a
regulation.
situation
Yeah.
in a place like Cambridge or portions of Boston,
yeah.
where normally where you would see like people going to rent hotels, where what would happen is instead of renting hotels, you end up with this free for all where every house on the block is basically competing for attention to sort of rent rooms because they can make more money by short-term rentals than they can
Right.
by
But a lot of
just
the
leasing
people that would go to a
apartments.
hotel aren't going to go to just somebody's house.
right.
I mean,
So
it's
it's
a whole
di-
different kind
it's
of
a different kind of
population
clientele.
and clientele. Yeah.
Right, but the thing is that I don't know that I would be thrilled if, in fact, most buildings in my neighborhood were, in fact,
Yeah.
primarily just short-term rental mini hotels.
No, of course not.
You know,
No.
I want to have regular neighbors so you get to know.
Right.
You know, do I have a right to want that? I think
Right.
I'd like to have that right.
Yeah.
So to whatever degree the local government can at least come up with a reasonable regulation, I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think they've tried to do that, and we'll see how it shakes out. I mean, when they passed the Airbnb rules, what is it, a year or two ago?
Wow.
You know, it's been a while since they
Yeah.
implemented. I think it might have been just last summer when
yeah.
it went into place, right?
Right.
But you know, it's not perfected at all,
No.
and it'll be sort of interesting to see where
It's,
that
you know,
goes.
it all comes down to enforcement, unless you're going to really knock on doors, which I guess they have, or somebody complains, somebody on the street complains about those rolling suitcases going back and forth, and you know,
Yeah.
that's all how they
Yeah.
find out where places are.
Right?
Yeah. So,
Yeah. So
I don't know.
who knows, right? One other thing we had on the committee report end of things, there was a committee report from the Health and Environment one was on
Yeah.
the zero
Oh yeah,
waste master
that
plan.
I went
So
to. I went to that hearing.
right, so who's the chair of that? Was that
It's
Devereaux-
co-chaired. Is it Devereaux and Zondervan?
could be
Dev-
that?
yeah.
That's right. And I think there was another one. It's Carlone and Zondervan for another committee, but I forget
Yeah.
which. Right. So I think well you were at the meeting, so
I was
you
at the
kind of
meeting. I
knew.
spoke. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know more or less what went down.
Yeah, it was a presentation of the DPW's, you know, what, you know, kind of a, it's in the report, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
online, you know, of what, you know, what they're getting for things and what, you know, the new things and
Yeah.
the rates of
So,
compost.
I mean,
and
it's
all.
important that people understand that
Mhm.
the sort of the evolving nature of waste management and recycling.
Right, but also, and a big goal is to reduce our trash putouts and coming up with a proper size bin, and I guess what's been proposed is a 32 gallon up to 48, but I'm going on more, go up to 48, because 32 is the size of the little compost bins.
Yeah.
Not the little, the
Yeah.
bigger ones, and I think that's too much.
Yeah.
I mean, too little. And most toters, I don't know what you have, but people have 50 gallon, those gray things with the black tops. I see them all over, and those are 50 gallon,
Yeah.
which can actually hold 150 pounds. So
Right.
my big beef was they always use pounds and gallons and interchangeably, and you shouldn't. But
Right.
we do have to reduce our trash,
That's true.
right? And that's
true.
why we implemented
But,
compost,
you
which
know-
is expanding to 13 plus.
Yeah, one of the things
rules.
that I take special note of
Yeah.
is that, you know, since we were on the recycling
Yes.
advisory committee for ages.
Well, you
Decades.
helped start recycling in Cambridge before I
Yeah,
was
we were,
around.
yeah, and
We're
but
going to have a show on that, by the way.
We-
'cause,
we'll do that
Mike
because-
Orr, he was asking about history. We've got to finish that history, though. It
and
only
I
went
actually
up to
I
2000.
have a few little,
I
little
know,
bits
we
and
can do that
pieces
another
there, right?
time. But
We do need to round it up, but I
yeah,
you
we
know,
have to get it up to.
I didn't realize it was 30 years since we
Yes,
actually
I
got
told
this
you
thing
that the
going.
other
I
day
said,
at the River
30
Festival.
years? You're kidding me.
1989.
Yeah, it was 1989, but one of the themes I pressed from 1991 on till I left the
Mm-hmm.
recycling advisory committee was, you know, I always I always felt that you shouldn't jump the shark. You know, in other words, don't push too far too fast ahead of the industry. You kind of push a little
Right.
ahead, but not
Yeah.
too far. You know, and
Yeah,
so because the last thing you want to do is to sort of be kind of this pulling back.
Yeah.
So like right now, for example, it's a small matter really, but like everybody's accustomed to recycling waxed paper
Right,
cartons,
but
and
they're
now
not-
you can't do
yeah,
that
yeah,
anymore,
I know.
right?
and
Now
that's
that's
hard.
that's
Yeah.
small
People are
change,
still
really,
putting
but
it in there, but no, it's true. You don't
But
want to
don't
take
put
away.
it in there
but
anymore.
right now, it's being
yeah.
bailed and not going anywhere. So.
Right, and you don't want to necessarily be encouraging recycling if the economics just makes it completely crazy too. So
But stuff is getting recycled. People came up to us
Yeah.
at the festival because I was helping there at the booth, and no, it is getting recycled.
Yeah.
There is, and in fact, those hated plastics, they are the second high. They get more for that after cardboard than all the other things. So
right.
it's not like we, you know.
Well, one of the things that I do find kind of refreshing is that a lot of this knowledge of the sort of the intricacies of the business is something that only those of us who would go to recycling advisory
Yeah.
committee meetings would know. So to whatever degree, for better or worse, a lot of that information is being thrust on the public. I think is
Yeah.
a good thing because it's time to find this out.
Right.
You know, the phrase they've been trying to promote is recycle right. I think now
Yeah, recycle
Yeah.
smart, recycle right,
smart.
yeah.
So in other
Don't
words,
throw in your hoses.
so
and
I think
everything else,
we've
plastic
achieved
bags.
the consciousness
Yeah.
of recycling, but now it's time to refine that a little bit and sort of
Yeah.
say let's understand a little bit better. And I hope that in the coming years that American entrepreneurs will actually create the markets so we don't have to
Well,
be
that is happening.
dependent on Chinese
we
markets.
are waking up to say, well, why did we close all those mills? Why did we do that? And it's
Yep.
starting.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's still going to take a few years, so it's going to be.
Yeah,
a
I
little
always
hard
figure
right
it's
now.
about a 4 or 5 year minimum
That's
before that
what-
stuff really
exactly.
happens.
So we've already into year
Anyway.
2.
So anyway, it's
All
always
right.
things to learn from city council agendas.
We'll
so.
see you next week.
We'll be back on for another exciting adventure of Cambridge Inside Out.